Hello there, this is Anthony on Book Talk at Book Place. And as always, this is a place where we get to meet an author and hear about his book or her book. And this is a special day when we have one special guest who is going to be with you in a short while, with us here in a short while. And her name is Jacqueline Fathing Galvin. And I won't say much because she has a lot of stories to tell us, so I won't waste one more minute other than just welcome Jacqueline. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me and letting me talk about my book.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, first and foremost, before we even proceed to the book, I see an interesting name. I mean, people call you an interesting name that I've only had that back in Africa, Mama Galvin. How does that come to be? Because it's not common to hear it. I mean, in our country, you're referred to as Mama, but it's a rare thing that I've heard of you. So tell us how that came to be.
Well, growing up, I only had one child, but there was never just one child in my home.
Okay.
There was always a lot of kids that we were the house where people came.
Yeah.
And so they called me Mama, Mama Galvin.
Okay.
And one calls me Mom. And the rest of them, either Mrs. Galvin or they call me Mama Galvin. And it just, Mama Galvin just sort of stuck because they would come and, watch TV, play games, sit outside. They would hang out with my son, Grant. And I just became Mama Galvin.
Ah.
And when we wrote the book and launched the brand, I already had the brand, but my marketing team has since renovated the brand and brought it to bigger and bolder life and launched our book, Grace for Grant, A Journey with an Old Soul. And Mama Galvin is really Mama Galvin now.
Oh, so we are glad to have you, Mama Galvin, on our show. And you are the CEO of Live Life Rich Moments.
Yes.
Now, we would also like to know about that as we proceed so that we can combine everything together.
Live Life's Rich Moments has been a saying ever since my son became sick and then passed away, because you don't know when the next rich moment may be or may not be. And so our one of our catchphrases is living gratefully.
Okay.
Because you should be grateful for every day that you have yourself or with your loved ones or just out in the beautiful world in the beautiful day. And so our brand is about lifestyle and pursuit of happiness and beautiful things and things that help your day, help you in your day. And that's really where that has come from. And it's evolved to right now we basically have our book that we have launched.
Yes.
The picture was illustrated by a wonderful artist named Gabby Zuniga.
Okay.
And Gabby did this off a picture that I had of Grant.
Okay.
He was standing at the edge of Lake Erie up at the tip of Ohio. He was standing on a rock, and the next land in back of him would be Canada.
Okay.
So I didn't realize it at the time when I was looking at one of the pictures. The original picture, I was sitting at his feet, and I didn't even really realize that. So when I found the original picture, it was kind of fun. But he was a very soulful child, a very Zen child. Just sort of his thinking evolved differently. He thought, I think, differently than other people, used more of his brain, maybe, I don't know. But he was a thinker. He was a student of the world, because he certainly wasn't a student of the classroom.
Okay.
I can tell you that much. If you look at his grades, it was like, oh boy, what's going to happen to this child? But he was more of a student of the world.
Okay.
And I look back on that and think, that was way better. Just way better.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
We have the book, and we have some different things. One of the things that we do have, let's see if I can grab it, that we are talking about.
Yeah.
This is actually our keepsake box.
Okay.
And this is a very interesting box. When you open it,
Yeah.
I'll not open it. When you open it, when we send it, it has all kinds of stuff in it.
Okay.
A book, a wine glass with his picture, bracelets, t-shirt. Actually, our t-shirt has Live Life's Rich Moments on it. And then actually the book cover on the back.
Yeah.
But these are the things that we're doing right now. They will evolve into other things. We're talking about doing these keepsake boxes for anyone who's had a loss or has the need for a keepsake box, because they are a decent size, but they're done with a very special oil that's handmade that actually makes this a very special piece. And this is a laser printer engraver that he has done. This is a picture of my son at a tailgate party before a football game.
Yeah.
So, and up in the top it says, "Made for Mama Galvin."
Mhm.
So these boxes are something we're starting to do along with some other offerings. They will expand as we grow as a business. So, but those are just things that epitomize the Live Life's Rich Moments.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for letting us know all that. As we get to know much more about Grace for Grant, uh, it's a long story. I know. I believe it's a long story. And take us back to when Grant was born and how you saw things at first, how things changed for you initially. Tell us that, please.
Actually, my ex-husband and I had been married for 12 years.
Mhm.
And so we finally were able to have this baby. And he was, I'm very small. I weigh about 97 pounds and I'm 5'2". And that child was 9 pounds.
Okay.
So he was a very large baby
Uh-huh.
and didn't want to come out. So they had to actually retrieve him. So he was not birthed, he was retrieved.
Okay.
And he was interesting from the very start. As a child, I've never seen a child stand up for himself like he did. He was 3, I think, at school, and somebody wanted to go down the slide in front of him, and he refused to let them pass.
Yeah.
They bit him in his chest and left a brown mouth mark. But he was not going to let that child get in front of him on that slide. It wasn't his turn.
Okay.
And then when we were at a company meeting, he was probably 7 or 8, and they were going down a water slide,
Yeah.
and people were landing on top of each other at the bottom. So he decided he was going to fix that. So he stood up at the top,
Mhm.
and he would put his arm out. And when it was time for the next person, somebody cleared at the bottom, he would raise his arm and let him go down the slide.
Okay.
Something with slides, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
So he was sort of a problem solver
Yeah.
with things that would come up. He wouldn't just sit by and let him go. He would figure out a way to fix them.
Mhm.
So, and I was thinking, where is this child? And I was sitting with an associate, and her kids came up and said, I said, "Have you seen my son?" And they said, "Oh yeah, he's slide monitor up at the top of the slide." And I was like, "What is that?" And then I said, "Sounds like him." So those were the types of things that his personality lent him towards.
Okay.
And I think when he was also 3, we belonged to a club south of us. And there's a window that would open out onto the pool deck
Mhm.
from the bar where you could get cocktails and sodas and things. And he was this little tiny thing, and he saw somebody do it. So I actually was watching him from afar. He walked up to the window and he tapped on the window, and the poor guy opens the window and is looking around, trying to see who tapped on the window. Well, there's a tiny little voice that he hears, and he looks down, and there's Grant, and
Mhm.
he wants a Shirley Tempo, which is a Shirley Temple that he couldn't pronounce.
Yeah.
So he would go to the magic window and get his Shirley Temples from this man behind the window. But he was very astute in those ways. He would watch something and he would pick it right up and know exactly what to do the next time. But that was just a staple of his personality.
Uh,
So when he then became ill,
mhm.
it was something of his nature to try and figure out what was going on with him.
Mhm.
It was early January. We had gone out for dinner for his birthday.
Okay. Which year?
And I'm sorry,
Which year?
19. He had just turned 19
Okay.
in
That,
2000,
okay.
in 2016.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
In 2016.
Yeah.
So he was not feeling well at dinner. And I look back on the pictures. He looked a little gray.
Mhm.
And so by Friday, this was on a Monday. By Friday, I came home and he was sitting on the couch with a friend, and he said, "Mom, I think I've had a stroke."
Mhm.
And I took one look at him and could not deny it. I mean, he looked like a person who'd had a stroke: saggy cheek, saggy eyes,
Yeah.
slurry speech.
Mhm.
It was off, out of balance. So we went to the hospital,
Mhm.
and he other than to transfer to another hospital, he really never came out again. We were at the one hospital for a week. He got accepted into the rehabilitation facility to work on his stroke deficiencies at the big hospital.
Okay.
And I went home to get him some clothes, and I came back and there was a cart and a team, and he'd had a heart attack.
Ah.
So we ended up in ICU and determined that he needed to be intubated and had to figure out things and why is all this happening? And they said it was either MS, a tumor, or a stroke, but everything pointed to stroke. So we went ahead and went with that. But in the end, it really was a brainstem tumor.
Ah.
And unfortunately, those gliomas you can do nothing about. They're just not fixable.
Ah.
So, but quite a fighter, that one. He was fighting back and forth for 5 months
Yeah.
before he finally succumbed to it.
Now, if I may ask, you tell us that Grant was not birthed the right way. I mean, he was brought out. He was forced out. Were there some implication of that action initially? Was there some way that seemed that he'd been affected when he was being birthed, or he was just a normal child all through?
Um, he was very clever,
Yeah.
and he was mischievous. I wouldn't say that he uh, was a bad child. He was really mischievous.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, it's kind of funny. Some of his teachers, that's the word they would use for him,
Mm-hmm.
that he was mischievous. But he had this big smile. So whenever he did something with this big smile, you couldn't help but just kind of laugh because
Yeah.
it wasn't, nothing was intentional. And he was always extremely contrite about anything he would do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when he was smaller, he was in Catholic school, and there were nuns there at the time.
Yeah.
And we were at a carnival,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed that Sister Karen, who was the principal at the time, she she sort of was watching him, and she had she had something on her mind, I think. And I said, "Is there something on your mind?" And she said, "It's a little like raising Walter Mitty, isn't it?" And I said, "Actually, yes, it is a little bit like raising Walter Mitty." And
Mm-hmm.
she just sort of laughed and walked away. And I thought she probably thinks I'm Walter Mitty too, but you know, sort of a dreamer type, artistic dreamer,
Yeah.
very thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
They finally had me have him tested when
Okay.
he was in 5th grade
Okay.
because they were afraid that he was ADD or ADHD, attention deficit, and that there was maybe something going on there. And so we did have him tested finally.
Okay.
And when we went to see the psychologist, she said, "How do you think you did, Grant?" And he said, "Terrible." And she looked at me and gave me one of these with her eyes popping out of her head. And I thought, uh-oh, what does this mean? So I said, "Well, how did he do?" And she said, "Well, we have a bell curve, one of these bell curves, and some people are here or here or here or here."
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, "Okay, what does that mean?" And she said, "Well, a perfect score is a 10."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Okay." And she said, "An exceptional score is a 12." And I thought, "Okay." And I thought, uh-oh, she's going to tell me something really crazy here. And I said, I'm beginning to get a little nervous.
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, where was he on the graph?" And she said, "Well, I don't have a place for him on my graph. He scored a 19." And, I think some parents' thoughts would have been, "Ooh, early college, early this,
Mhm.
exploit that, whatever." My first thought was, I am really screwed here. This child is going to run circles around me,
Mhm.
which he did,
Yeah.
He
Mhm.
was just always thinking, um, like I said, mischievous and just funny. He was extremely funny.
Okay.
And we would watch something and he would laugh, which would make me laugh, which would make everybody else in the room laugh, because he had a great laugh. But very personable child. After he passed, a lot of people would tell me stories that I had never heard,
Yeah.
about how he would meet them for the first time and sit them down next to him and ask them all about themselves, not even talking about himself. "Who
Okay.
are you? And what do you do? And what's interesting about you?" And I heard a lot of these stories after he was gone. And he would leave the house and I wouldn't know where he was going. And I found out that he was out visiting people, just out in the neighborhood or out somewhere, just visiting with people, learning about them.
Okay.
So student of the world really does kind of apply to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's interesting. So now I know it's not easy. It's not an easy thing for someone to lose a child, whether whatever age the child is, even a grown-up child, a young child, is not easy for anyone. So I believe that it was a hard time for you to face that fact that Grant is gone and you're gonna live without Grant.
It was a hard and harsh reality to face.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that was interesting about it is, uh, my ex-husband and I had divorced in 2013,
Okay.
and he had moved out. And then he ended up living an hour away. So it wasn't easy for him to spend time with Grant.
Yeah.
But when he became sick, I still lived in the house that we bought together. So he still owned half the house, and there was a nanny's quarters to it.
Mm-hmm.
So he stayed out there when he needed to come up and see Grant.
Okay.
Then, in the middle of this process, his company fired him.
Mm-hmm.
My company was great to me.
Okay.
And they just said, "Do whatever you need to do." And I was a medical rep. So I spent pretty much, I think there was only 2 days in the 5 months that he was in the hospital that I was not at that hospital.
Mm-hmm.
But I would try and go out and work, and it just was very difficult.
Yeah.
And I did have samples that I had to get out every month. So even when he was in his deep sleep,
Mm-hmm.
I would sit next to his bed and say, "Well, how many samples do you think I should send to this office?" And I would say, "How about 4 cases?" And I know that at those times he was probably waiting for me to finish up that garbage so he could get his foot massage or something. But because I could see him, in the bed, kind of moving around, like, "I'm getting bored with this, Mom. Let's go."
Yeah.
But my ex-husband Ray was fired during this time, and Mark and I, um, were living in the house. This is Mark's house now. We
Okay.
renovated it and moved it into this.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, we were living over in my house, And at some point, my ex-husband was unable to, he could not find another job.
Okay.
So he moved back home. So the three of us lived in the house together until 2019 when we sold it.
Okay.
But I came home from work one day, and I walked in the house and it looked like Home Goods had thrown up on it. There was stuff everywhere.
Mhm.
And I walked into the den, and those two were sitting in the den. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Those two were sitting in the den having a cocktail. And my ex-husband said, "Look, everything's back." And he said, "I paid off all my debts down there, and I moved everything back home. And Mark helped me pull everything off the truck." And I said, "Isn't that great of you? You helped my ex-husband move everything back into the house. Where's the wine?
Uh-huh.
I'm sure there's a bottle here somewhere." I'm
Yeah.
thinking, "Oh Lord, everything I got rid of in the divorce, including my ex-husband, was back." So, but it worked out well because the three of us were there for each other.
Okay.
And usually we cooked dinner together and ate together and watched TV together and then went to bed. Not together, but we just managed our lives around each other, and it worked out fine. People would, I kind of miss the days when we would tell people we all lived together,
Yeah.
and the look on their face was always really classic. It was fun.
It's to some of us it's unimaginable. I mean,
It's unimaginable. I've had a lot of people
you have
say,
to
"I
tell
could never do that. If my life depended on it, I couldn't do that."
us.
In fact, when I finally went back to work, one of my big bosses said, "So you're still living with your boyfriend and your ex-husband?" And I said, "Yes."
Mhm.
He said, "I don't understand. I don't think I could ever live with my ex-wife." And I said, "Yeah, that's what most people say."
How was that possible?
Well, yeah, he had his work to do, and he finally did get a job. And he would go to work, and he would come home, and we'd have dinner and talk about our day and whatever. And sometimes we'd go to the pool together, and sometimes, and the classic thing about it is my ex-husband and I still own a timeshare together.
Ah,
And usually it deposits, we break it into 2 weeks per year, and we each get a week.
okay.
Last year they deposited it incorrectly, and now we only have 1 week. So in November, the three of us are going on vacation together.
That's quite interesting. Anyway, let's go back to Grace for Grant. When was the book written and what inspired it? I mean, we know the story of Grant, so, but what triggered you to put this into writing?
It was his last wish.
Okay.
And we all thought he was going to come out of this because it wasn't apparent until the end that it was a tumor.
Mm-hmm.
The stroke that he had thrown off, he threw off several strokes during this whole episode.
Okay.
And he wanted to, when he awoke, he wanted to write this book with me and tell it from his perspective
Okay.
of being kind of in his body, but aware of everything going on.
Yeah.
And I know this because of other people who have told me he would come to them in their dreams. He would break in on their meditations
Mm-hmm.
and give messages to me from other people.
Okay.
And his desire was to have this book written and published. So I started it when he was in the hospital.
Yeah.
And then when he passed away, I couldn't look at it. So I left it until right before the pandemic. I decided I'm going to write this for him. It's time.
Okay.
Time to get this out. It's time to help other people with this who are experiencing terminal illness, loss, having to deal with difficult situations. Um, I had actually have had a friend of mine who produces a syndicated TV show
Mm-hmm.
say, this is something that everyone can relate to because this is a life story. This is something that everyone can relate to. There is something that everyone is going through or has gone through or will go through in this book. that everyone can learn from. And so I wrote this book in about 85 days.
85 days.
About 85 days.
That's been.
And there were days when my fingers were moving so fast on the keyboard that I couldn't even keep up. So there was somebody behind me pushing me on this journey.
Yeah. And we all need someone to push us ahead.
Yeah, usually they're sitting next to you and you're able to touch them, but this one wasn't.
Okay.
And when I started the book, there was this crow that showed up at our home.
Okay.
The very first day we ever saw him, he was tapping on the bedroom glass.
Yeah.
And the cat got down and was looking at the window. So I opened the shutters and there's this crow and my cat. And they sat there and communed for about 10 minutes until he finally flew away. Well, he didn't go far because he was sitting, when I walked outside, he was sitting down in the, under the cabana in the patio furniture.
Okay.
And I said to Mark, I said, if he leaves when this book is finished, I'll know who it was. Well, about a week after, he would come and eat my cat food for the cat that's outside.
Yeah.
He would also sit on the furniture and the cat would sit underneath him and they would look at each other.
Yeah.
So, but he would come and commune with us. And then when the book was finished, he brought the missus to breakfast one last time and then he was gone. And I didn't see him again until 1 year later, this year, to the day, he showed back up. Because in my Facebook memories, it popped up that this bird had come to visit. And I noticed it early in the day, and then the Facebook memory popped up later on that said this was the day that we call him Edgar Allan Crow, came to stay for a while. So this year, as I was writing the book, there he was. And when I finished the book and launched it on May 27th, which was the 5th anniversary of Grant's death, Edgar was around for a little bit, and now he seems to be gone. Although a friend of Grant's that's living in Texas says she's reading the book on her porch every morning with her coffee, and a crow comes to sit with her while she reads the book every morning.
So you you kind of thought that there is only one person who could be that mischievous to eat cat's food.
Yeah, we know who that is. We're pretty sure we know who that is.
Okay.
So he lets you know what he wants.
Yeah.
And actually we threw his ashes into a creek in North Carolina. And when we did that, a beautiful blue monarch butterfly came and sat on the rock where Grant used to jump off and swim in the creek.
Mm-hmm.
He spent about 10 years of his childhood there.
Okay.
And so this butterfly stayed for the entire time that we were putting his ashes in the creek. And when we left to come home, the monarch left, but he pretty much stayed around. So my understanding is that souls can take certain forms when they want to be present for things. So that's sort of what we've come to get used to. He shows up when he wants to be part of something or when he wants something done.
Okay.
He's a taskmaster, this one.
There
was no way I wasn't finishing this book.
Yeah, you need to finish it as quickly.
Finish it, and launch it. So on the 27th, we had a very beautiful launch party. A friend of ours was very kind enough to offer his beautiful home for it.
Mm-hmm.
And about 75, 85 people went into that home to buy a book and talk to all the kids showed up. I mean, a lot of them are in different places now, but I have a picture of the garden area where they are holding Mama Galvin in their arms across them. And there's probably 15, 20 kids in back of me that were there for the launch of Grace for Grant.
Oh, yes. I saw that on liveliferichmoments.com.
Oh, that picture?
Yeah, I did.
Yes. Yes.
And whoever is watching this should go there and watch and see the picture back there. Now, let me ask, this Grace for Grant book, it covers the period between, I mean, within the illness of Grant, or does it stretch back to when he was born and the way he was growing up?
Yes, it starts out, the very first line is, Mom, I think I've had a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And it leads you into where we go into the hospital and the things that happened in the first hospital, and we transfer to the second hospital, and then he has the heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
And we are now crossing the bridge from the rehab center into the main hospital to go to ICU because we don't know how much heart function he has.
Okay.
So from there, it goes back to the fact that I really did not have an easy time getting pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And so we finally were able to get pregnant. Then he was born, and then it goes through some specific incidences in his life, like the slide things and
The ones you
um,
mentioned already, yeah.
yes, and different moments in his life as he grows up back to the point. And there were some very tense moments. He had a couple brushes with the law over silly things. Um, there's one incident when they were probably 11 or 12 years old and they're trying to build like skateboard ramps, and they were on there's a park close by to the house, and they were getting wood from this trash pile from a construction site, and it was on the curb, so it was basically trash, but they were going through this wood and they saw a police cruiser come by. So
Mm-hmm.
they didn't know what to do, so they went and hid in the porta potty for the construction workers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was at home around the corner and I got a call, and he said, Mom, you need to talk to the policeman. And I'm thinking, what? You're 11 years old. Why do I have to talk to a cop? What is going on here?
Mm-hmm.
So I drove up to the circle and I said, what have you two done? And he said, well, I found them hiding in the porta potty. And
Okay.
I said, excuse me? And he said, they saw me coming and they hid in the porta potty. And I said, and didn't come out? And he said, no, I waited and waited and they never came out. And I said, why would you not come out? And they said, well, we didn't think he saw us. And I said, well, he saw you. I said, how fun was that? Standing in a porta potty, hiding from the police.
Uh-huh.
I said, get in the car. So they were getting ready to get in the car. And I said to the policeman, I said, all right, I'll take them home. I said, it's past curfew anyway. You had a discussion with them about curfew? And I don't know, it was like 10 o'clock or something. And he said, well, there's no curfew, ma'am. And I looked at him like, I don't care if you're a cop or not. I'm going to smack the crap out of you.
Yeah.
Work with me here. I'm trying to put him on the straight and narrow. There's no curfew. Ugh. So I put him in the car and I said, you're going home. You are getting in the shower and you are not leaving my sight for the rest of the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So there are incidences like that that are discussed in the book.
Right.
And so it goes through all these things all the way up until we go back to Mom, I think I've had a stroke and our lives are never going to be the same again.
Yeah.
And then it goes into in the hospital for 5 months and the back and forth, the great achievements, and then the things that aren't so good. And then some of the doctors who are wonderful and some of the doctors who are not.
Mm-hmm.
And the lesson that comes from this book for people is you have got to advocate for your loved ones.
Yeah.
Because most of the time they can't do it themselves or they can't do it effectively. And in the beginning, when he was in a cardiac unit, he had was a paper that he could type things out on.
Okay.
And type words and sentences to communicate. And he typed out, I don't think you're going to stand up for me. And that like pierced my heart like a knife. And I said, he doesn't think I'm going to help him. So I don't like confrontation. And maybe that's why he thought that. But from that second, I turned on a dime to question everything, to ask why they were doing things, to be his advocate. And so much so that a friend of mine had his mother in the hospital and he had her put next to Grant's room because he knew I was there and I wouldn't let anybody get away with anything. So I had to fire several doctors who were not doing their best. At one point, a doctor was standing right over him and he could hear him. And he said, just pull the plug. He's never going to be the same. Just pull the plug. And I had to chase him. He made my ex-husband and a good friend of ours cry.
Yeah.
So I had to chase him out of the room and tell him not to ever show his face there again. And he tried to at another time, and I had to chase him out of the room again.
Mm-hmm.
And after I did so, my child squeezed my hand and he kicked his leg out at me, and he heard every word this man said. So these instances are all documented. And also when they told me that he was no longer with us. And then the funeral, it was a beautiful service. And then life goes on from there. When we spread his ashes down south, my sister said to me, I'm going to give you a heads up. Your ex-husband isn't going back home. He's going to move back in with you. And I thought, okay, after you go through something like this, an ex-husband moving back home really isn't that big of a deal. In this grand scheme of things, there's a lot worse things that can be going on.
Yeah.
And it talks about our life, the three of us together, until the day that we sold the house, handed over the keys, and went our separate ways.
Okay. So in all these accounts and the challenges that you faced and you overcame, and you're still standing strong, because someone would go crazy over some of the issues, I believe that you've documented them to help someone out there, which is very good. And they are going to help someone who is going to be willing to read the book. And thank you for sharing the stories. I know there are some more stories that whoever is going to take the book is going to read from there. But maybe you could give us a tip or two tips of how you've been able to face it and overcome it and still continue standing strong the way you are.
Well, there really isn't anything that you can do. It is something that happens and something that has happened.
Yeah.
And I had one person tell me, well, a lot of mothers would take a bunch of drugs and hide.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that doesn't do me or anyone else any good
Yeah.
who depends on me.
Mm-hmm.
And even after he passed away, the kids still came to the house till the time that we moved. They
Mm-hmm.
still come to this house.
Yeah.
Two of them are upstairs. So, I still have responsibilities to other humans, and I can't just crawl in bed and pull the covers over my head and shove the pillow in my face as much as I might want to.
Yeah.
That doesn't work for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So there are lessons to learn and things to be imparted to people that may help them. And this book is a primer on that. It is a guide on how to find solutions out of horrible things that happen. I know, I know that people say there's humor in it. Yes, there's humor in it because he was a funny kid.
Yeah.
And there were some funny instances along the way. And there were some funny instances after.
Yeah.
And you have to interject humor into these things because people can't sit and read a book that is just such a Debbie Downer that they want to crawl in a hole after they're done with it. They need to learn something from this, and they need to learn that you can go on by just facing things. Family and friends are very important.
Yeah.
The fact that you still have to be there for someone, you can't hide in a hole. It's not. It doesn't do you or anyone else any good. And I know I've said that, but there are ways to put your feet on the ground, try and do something for someone else. This book is for everyone else out there that don't think they can go on, that don't think that they have any value anymore because what they lived for is gone. There are other things to live for and other people who need you. And everyone has value to impart to other people to get them through their day or their life. And it's you just have to stand up and put one foot in front of the other. And trust me, there are days that I don't want to get out of bed, but you know, I might lay there for a minute and then say, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
This is silly.
Mhm. And to put the picture straight, you never had any other child of your own before Grand or after Grand.
No, he was my only one, and he was tough to get. So God and I had a little problem with each other for a while because I said, surely you would not take my only child.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because
Mhm.
as it turns out, he was needed elsewhere. He
Wow.
was a very evolved soul.
Okay.
And he was only supposed to, I was told by other people, there was a woman who, one of Mark's tennis friends had me in touch with her sister.
Yeah.
And Lisa said, he was only supposed to be here for a short time and he has a message for you. And the message, well, one of the messages was, I lost my keys one day while I was at the hospital when I walked up to get something to eat into the little town center that was there.
Okay.
And I never did find them. And I would take his keys off the rack to open and lock the back door.
Okay.
And she said, I had a downloaded message from him, and he wanted me to tell you something. I have no idea what it means, but maybe you might. And he said, Mom, just take the keys, which sounds just like him. Mom. If I heard that once, I heard it a million times. Mom.
Yeah.
So just take the keys. And she said, do you know what that means? And I said, yes, it means go in the kitchen and put my keys on his lanyard and stop blocking the door and putting them back. They're
Okay.
your keys now. Take the keys. So, there's a lot of things that you learn from all of this. And it's
Uh,
part of life.
Yeah, and I want to believe there is a reminder to each and every one of us who are listening to this video, or those who are going to read the book, that life goes on. I mean, you don't stop when some of the things come to a standstill, or they stop, or they disappear, or they transit to another place. I mean, you have to keep on moving and keep on going.
You do, because if you stand still, uh, life will just run over you.
Mm-hmm.
And then all you do is have more problems.
Yeah.
And so as hard as it may be, you have to stand up and face things and know that with each foot that you put forward, you're healing yourself and you're helping to heal others. And you can't stop because of this incident. It's just, it is a part of life. And in the grand scheme of things, life is very short, no matter how long you live it.
It is.
There are other horizons and other universes out there. And my sister once said to me, she lost her husband at 50 from
Okay.
cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me, and that was 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me, I never hear from David. And I said, then you aren't looking for the signs, because the signs are very plain.
Mm-hmm.
They're out there and there are things that happen. And she said, some days I can feel him curled up next to me and back of me in bed like he used to do. And I said, that is him. He's coming to you in your time of need to console you
Yeah.
and to let you know that he's still there for
Mm-hmm.
you. And she said, I never even thought about that. She said, it's like I can feel him. And I said, pay attention. Pay attention to these things. When people see things and they think that's interesting, that's somebody looking out for you. That's somebody letting you know they're there and saying hello and just checking on you.
Um,
So
Wonderful. Now, Mama Galvin, you
yeah,
still continue to be Mama for many. You have children still coming over, and life goes on. You still have a bright outlook on life. What dreams do you have right now? Big dreams that you have for the future?
well, I have actually, when we started to put this all together,
Yeah.
my little company was just me and I really wasn't doing much with it.
Mhm.
When I finally said, I have to write this book,
Yeah.
I have two kids that obviously one is very good in woodworking
Yeah.
and in sales
Uh-huh.
and with ideas.
Okay.
And the other one is a marketing expert. She is his fiance, and she is very well versed in social media and how to
Yeah.
do things,
Mm-hmm.
how to work with websites, how to work with branding.
Yeah.
And there's no way I could possibly pay these two to help me.
That's a
So
good combination.
now they are
Mm-hmm.
part owners of my company. They each have a percentage.
Yeah.
So one is a chief operating officer and one is a chief marketing officer.
Okay.
And Mark is the director of photography
Yeah.
and I'm the CEO. So we have a little company that we have pulled together that will move forward into the future with products and services. Services is a big thing. And there will be more books. There'll be a couple of self-help books coming down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I also, not that this will be on this site, but they'll probably be linked together. I
Okay.
am also a fiction author.
Yeah.
And people say, well, what do you write? And I said, I murder people. So those, I actually have two other books. One is my first novel, A Tease of Murder.
Okay.
And then I have an ebook series that's a spinoff from that, that's in 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And we will be releasing two episodes were already released, but we'll be releasing those 6 episodes later on this year on another format, another platform. But we will be going forward with the authorship, the writing, the products, the services, and as we move forward, there is also another child that we became aware of named Grant
Yeah.
that also kind of goes under Grace for Grant out of Georgia. And he has a foundation called Grace for Grant. So proceeds from our uh, sales of things we're going to start when we're able to put proceeds into that foundation.
Wow. That's a good setup.
That's a goal. That's a goal.
A
I
good
need to pay off a little debt first
sorry.
from getting everything up and running. It's really not cheap to launch a book or a brand or these things, and it needs to be professional. So there has to be some money behind that. So we have some things to pay off, and as we move forward, and the book sales have been pretty swift. We have almost accomplished that goal.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
So, and it hasn't even been a month. It's only been maybe 3 weeks, 2 weeks from the launch, I think.
Yeah.
So, and we've almost paid off the base of what we put into the foundation of this company. So, um, people are giving this book wonderful reviews on Amazon, whether they bought it on Amazon or through our site.
Uh-huh.
This is a commemorative edition, this one, and there is an actual extra chapter in this.
Okay. On the
And these are some of the funnier stories of Grant. I think every last one of them are very funny.
oh
So
yeah. To everyone who's watching this video, go get the book Grace for Grant and connect with Jacqueline on Live Life Rich Moments, Live Life's Rich Moments.com, and get to be a part of her as she proceeds, as she achieves the dreams that she set forth. And that's a quick growth for a book. A book that is only about 2-3 weeks old, and some good report from it. That's very wonderful. And we are wishing you greatest things ahead. We wish you great success. Please, if you are watching this, go get the book. Don't forget, get the book. But before we let Jacqueline go, we would like to hear some parting shot. I call it a parting shot, some few words, some summary of what we've been having here that is going to be remembered by this person who is watching this video right now.
I think a phrase that I had used previously, but it's a little long to put on a card, a business card, or into slogans, brands, those types of things are, you need something short. Grace for Grant, living gratefully is basically our slogan that we boiled down from a phrase that I had previously used, which was never take anything for granted and always be grateful.
Yeah.
And that was the phrase, which we boiled down to living gratefully, because the other one was really long. But uh, our site is all about that. There's some stories about that on there. There's actually, Jen just put story time on there the other day, and it was all about her first her first encounter with Edgar Allan Crow, and she was telling me about how this bird came to eat the cat food earlier in the day, and she happened to see it, and she didn't know what to think. It scared her to death as she was standing there. And the whole time she's telling me this, I'm looking over her shoulder because the bird is sitting right behind her on the cable line. She didn't know it.
Yeah.
And I said, honey, if you'll turn around, he's watching every move you make, and he'll look at you, and then he would look at me, and then he'd look at her, and then he'd look at me almost like, does she not get that I'm sitting here? So that was kind of funny. But there's a big wide world around you. Pay attention, watch signs, don't take things for granted, don't just shove them off your shoulder. Most things mean something. The world is not out there just plodding along for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it was a year anniversary for a friend of mine recently. She lost her son this time last year to a car crash.
Oh,
And he was 23, and he was a good friend of Grant's. He grew up with Grant. They lived across the park from the circle we lived in, and those two grew up together. And we have these bracelets that say "Grace for Grant," live life's rich moments. And the ones that came out when we had Grant's funeral, because my friend Susan had pretty much concocted this brand. When he died, he was wearing his Grace for Grant bracelet. In fact, this black one I have is his band that I got from his funeral. And when I went to see his mother the day after it happened, she gave me this big hug. She's a tall woman. She's 6 foot in her stocking feet. And she picked me up and hugged me and swung me around and said, tell me all about it. I want to know when he's going to come see me. And I said, well, Grant always left the back door open. He would slam the door and it would pop back open. A week after he died, that door, if I shut it once, I shut it 30 times. I finally had to lock it because the thing would not stay shut. And I finally yelled at him and said, Grant, stop opening the door. And there were 4 kids in the den who came flying through the house like a herd of buffalo and said, what's going on? And I said, he won't shut the door. And they said, oh yeah, that's him. Never did shut that door right. So I said, is there something that he does? And she said, sometimes he would come in the window so I wouldn't know how late he was. And I said, better lock your windows. So the first night that they had gotten to bed, she went into the living room because the light was back on, and the light went off and on 10 times. So, they sometimes I think maybe they don't know they're gone. I don't know. And they're trying to let you know, trying to ask what's going on. I'm not sure. But what's funny is those two were very good friends. And my Grace for Grant bracelet hides under his bracelet all the time. It's never apart unless I separate it. So they're together somewhere, wreaking havoc.
So this is what I have got from that. Never take anything for granted.
Yes.
Take Grant's story and learn from it and use it. So thank you very much, Jacqueline. We are very pleased to have you in our show. We are glad that you came. And once again, all those who are viewing, all those who are listening, go get the book, Learn from Grant. That's the book, Grace for Grant, A Journey with an Old Soul. And once again, we are glad. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go on
Absolutely.
to our bookplacemedia.com website and follow us there. Watch the videos that are there. And we are glad that you're here. Thank you very much, Jacqueline, and everyone
Thank
else.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.